So we're in central London. We're actually outside the Silver Vaults. We've just come out, to be fair. Kev and I have been up into London just to have a little look round. We had one or two people to meet. And I said to Kev, I want to go to the Silver Vaults. He said, what's the Silver Vaults? I said, well, come on, I'll show you. Now, the Silver Vaults have been here. We're in Chancery Lane in the City of London. It is a very historical building, and underneath this building where I am right now are a lot of vaults. They almost look like cells, don't they?
Safes. They're big
Safes, yeah.
Walk-in safes.
And there is more silver in this building than you could ever imagine. Kev, what were your...
My eyes are on stalks. Just
Yeah.
look at that. I mean, there is so much that you can't see. You know the saying, you can't see the wood for the trees.
Yeah.
Well, that's it. You have to stand there for literally minutes and then let your eyes focus on something and then hone in on that.
Did you appreciate why I wanted to come?
I did, yeah, very much so. I like it, you know. I mean, it's just that the history, and it's a shame it's not as well regarded anymore, isn't it? People are missing out.
In many respects, they are indeed missing out. I mean, we saw a pair of were they vases that come from Lord Lucan's estate, and
they were salt cellars. Oh no,
vases. They were,
those vases. Yeah, Lord Lucan's vases apparently.
But what we're going to do, we're doing this video kind of backwards, because what we're going to do now is I'm going to cut into some of the bits that we found in there. To be fair, we was only in there for like just about an hour. Didn't really have much chance to have a look around, because the first place that we visited, the gentleman there was very friendly, welcomed us in, recognised me from somewhere. He said he wasn't quite sure where, but he knew that he'd seen me before.
Some dogging website.
So, you always bring a bit of class to the channel. Oh dear, oh dear.
You cut that out?
No, I'm not going to cut it out. Look. I'll leave it in all your glory. Look, you're the guilty man.
You normally stitch me up.
Honestly, I can't bring him anywhere. Anyway, so I'll take you inside now, show you what we found. I think you're going to enjoy this. You might be surprised.
Yes.
Welcome back, everyone. So today I've got a real treat for you. We are in central London. We are at the Silver Vaults. A lot of you may not have heard about the Silver Vaults, but I can tell you, I've not been here for years myself, but the place never changes. Always got some wonderful treasures. Today I'm with John Walter, and we've had a quick chat. He's got some wonderful bits and pieces. Now, guys, you know how much I love my history, tradition, and I'm always telling you about beautiful objects from the past. And today, John has got a little treat for us. He's going to show us his favourite, 3 or 4 items?
We've got 3 or 4 quite rare, quite interesting items. I think
you know the one that I fell in love with, and we'll have a little look at that later.
Right.
But first, what are you going to show us first of all?
Well, I'll tell you what I'll show you
first.
first.
Let's have a look.
These I've recently bought.
Now this is it a pair?
Well, there's a set of 4.
There's a set of 4.
And these were made in 1767 for the Earl of Hillsborough. Now, the Earl of Hillsborough was the last English-American Secretary of State for the colonies. Am I allowed to use that word these days?
Well, that's what it was back then.
And he was Secretary of State for the colonies from 1768 to 1772, I think, and a friend of Benjamin Franklin. And these have come from Hillsborough Castle, and that's the official residence of the, I was just about to say the Queen, but it would now be the King.
Now, can you feel the tingling in your spine? Because as he's talking, that's what I can feel. Now, I'm going to get some close-ups of these as well and show you the actual beauty of the manufacture.
And if you look down here, those are his coat of arms, and it says it's an Earl's coronet, and it says per deum et ferrum obtinere, which sort of basically translates as you get everything through God and the sword.
That's the way they looked at it back then.
Well, it's not very woke these days, but that's what it was. That's what it was then.
You can't change history, right?
But they're beautifully made. I don't know whether you can see how the...
Well, I'll be getting some real nice macro shots of those. Look at that.
The capitals are beautifully pierced, and these remove, you see, so then when they got wax all over them. And they're made, there's a lot of different techniques in there. They're sort of hand-raised, hand-pierced, and there's quite a bit of casting involved.
How long do you think something like that would have taken to make back in the day?
Weeks.
Yeah. Because that's the one thing I've always said is that they had a luxury then that we didn't have today, time.
Yes, I mean, actually, it's maybe a good idea, maybe to compare that with, say, a sort of 1920s look-alike, and then you can see what the difference that's going on. Of course, everything generally pre-First World War wasn't constrained by labour costs. You know, if you've ever wondered why modern buildings are ugly, well, it's sort of
there's the reason.
Labour.
Yeah.
And I'm not offending any architects
No,
out
no,
there.
no, I'm
but,
sure
you
there's
know.
not. Now, we're going to play a little game because we're going to show you these beautiful objects and I want you to guess how much these items are, and then at the end, we'll reveal the asking price for them. And I'll also pop up the website as well. If you're interested, there's nothing in this for me, by the way, guys. If you're interested, you can always give them a ring, and I'm sure they'll be happy to talk to you about them and give you any advice that you might require. What's next on the list?
Well, I've got quite an interesting set of, it's probably the world's biggest
Should we
salt
take
cellars.
2 each?
Yeah,
There
they're
we go.
probably not what people would probably imagine as salt cellars today because of their size. But these are very interesting because I've got one pair made in 1750 by a well-known maker called Peter Taylor. And then the other pair are made in 1770 by a Royal Goldsmith partnership called Parker and Wakelin. Now I know that everything Parker and Wakelin ever made, they had an inventory of all their customers. So maybe a bit of an Anaraki thing to do, but I went searching at the V&A to try and find out who these were made for. If you look on the inside, there's a family crest, which I did recognise straight away. I don't know whether I've got it the right way around now.
We'll get a
There we
close
go.
up
Well, there
on
we go.
that, yeah.
That's the family crest of a lion, and they happen to belong to Lord Melbourne's grandfather. The family surname was Lamb. And let me just move, and here is the original.
Read it out from, what does it say? So what you've got on there is you found the original cost, right?
Cost. It says, well, you see, there's 4 of them, and what it did was take his father's salts into Parker and Wakelin in 1770 and want another pair made. So in March the 26th, 1770, Lord Melbourne wandered in. Lord Melbourne then had Brocket Hall. That might mean something to the viewers. And for a pair of chase salts, they cost £11, 15 shillings and 4pence, and they weigh 20 ounces.
Back in 1750.
Well, in 1770.
1770, yeah.
And that, as an American professor who works out sort of inflationary, you're talking in today's money 300 times 12, say £3,500 to £4,000. There'd have been an awful lot of labour involved in making those, but when something was made in the 18th century, it was more to do almost with the bullion than perhaps the labour. Today it's all about, if you were to make something, it'd be all about the labour, and the bullion is a very low
And you was explaining
component.
earlier on about the value of silver back in the day.
Well, the value of
by
silver was
comparison.
approximately 25, in modern parlance, 25 pence an ounce, which computes roughly to sort of 80 to 90 pounds an ounce in today's money, and it's about 17 or 18 as we speak.
Yeah.
Whereas gold was, throughout most of the 18th century, was £4.23 an ounce, which you times that by 300, you get to, say, £1,300, which is about roughly what it's
where we are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So gold has sort of held its value with lots of ups and downs
Yeah.
over the years, but silver is probably a quarter to the fifth of the price, which is odd, seeing as silver's a whole lot more useful. And
So like myself, you obviously have a massive passion for historical items. And we was talking briefly before we went on camera, not so many people seem to appreciate that today, do they?
well, the problem is sometimes you'll show something to somebody and say, well, this belongs to sort of Nelson's father or something, and they'll turn around to me and say, who's Nelson?
Who's that? Yeah, yeah.
And of course, history is a bit of a movable feast, and people come in and say, have you got something? And I'll show them something, and they say, well, that's not very traditional. And I'll say, well, it is traditional to
Back in the day.
to somebody who died 100 years
Yeah,
ago.
yeah,
It's not
yeah,
traditional necessarily to me,
Yeah.
because it's not what I remember when I was growing
Sure,
up. So
yeah.
so you've got to remember, sort of tradition's almost like a sliding
Of course,
scale.
yeah.
Yeah.
Top of the pots was tradition to me.
Well,
when
that's
I
what
was
I
a
was saying. We
teenager,
were
so-
obviously the same vintage. So yeah, top of.
What else have you got there that you're going to show us? Anything else that particularly takes your eye? I mean, some of them tankards you got are absolutely extraordinary as well. I've always loved the tankard. Show me a nice tankard, a nice early one. What have you got?
You've got a nice. I'll just wander over here, for example, and you've got a very nice. There's a nice early tankard, for example. You can always tell it's an early tankard because the lid is very flat. If that's made in 1673 by a royal goldsmith called Francis Leake.
1673. Wow.
So, and those are the marks.
And that's just in case you don't know, guys. If anyone's wondering how we know when this was made, well, not only do we know exactly the year that it was made, but we can also tell the hallmarks, which are beautifully marked and clear. They tell us where it was made, and indeed who made it as well. So there's no dispute about its age. This is fantastic. 1673. Charles
You see how sort of flat the top is. If for example, you get
that's a way to drink a pint, right? What an amazing.
There's
Kev's
one
behind the camera.
There's one actually from
I think his tongue's hanging out.
There's one from 1773. You see, it's still a lidded tankard, but it's quite a different form. If you put the sort of two together, you
difference in style
different
periods.
in style periods, and also this one in my right hand is almost a third of the price of the 1673 one.
The marks on here are really nice and crisp and clear as well. Yeah.
But much rarer, obviously, being 1673 than 100 years later at 1773.
Yeah.
But
I mean, that's
and you
a
can
rare
actually
beast.
see, beautifully made, but you can actually see underneath. It's quite rough underneath, and a lot of people would look under the underneath and think, gosh, that's been repaired underneath. But it hasn't. It's done with an old charcoal forge, and if you get the 1770s ones, it'll be a bit cleaner underneath,
cleaner,
not quite.
Was this gilded originally inside?
No. Tankards are rarely gilded inside. It's one of those things which goblets are often gilded.
Yeah, the salts were.
Salts were gilded. And
gilded is like you can see like a slight gold effect.
And that was to prevent corrosion from the salt.
Yeah.
That would help.
Well, so far from what you showed me, this is my favourite object by far. But there is one thing in the window.
Oh, let me go. I know what you're going to say.
I absolutely fell in love with. You guys are going to be a bit freaked out
on then,
by it,
I'll
because
go
it is
and
a
get
little
it.
bit anorak-y, but it is wonderful. Right, this one definitely does give me a tingle. Now, I know what you're saying. A lot of you going, Thorpe's got a spoon in his hand.
Oh, he's got a spoon.
What's he getting excited about? But let me tell you. In fact, I won't tell you. I'm going to let the expert tell you all about this spoon. This is absolutely stunning. Find me another one. Tell us all about it.
I think this is probably the oldest, fully hallmarked piece of silver in the world at the moment for sale. It's made in 1528. I don't know whether you can see it. It's what they call an apostle spoon, and it's quite an unusual shape.
Try and keep the price out. We want people to guess.
No looking.
1528.
And they're very, very rare at this date. Silver, there's lots of coins from the 1500s, but there's very little silver. And the reason for that is that silver, before the opening of the New World mines, was probably, in today's money, inflation adjusted, about £1,000 an ounce. So that was a sort of £2,000 gift in the early 1500s. And what would have happened with, if you'd have had that in your house, say 80 or 100 years later, it would be like having a very expensive sort of silk shirt that you bought in the 1970s with big flyaway lapels, and everybody started laughing at you and taking the mick.
So they had it melted.
Yeah. So there's as I say, there's lots of coins in that period, but very few articles, and that's got a little symbol of St. James the Greater.
1520. Henry VIII was on the throne when that spoon was made, and the condition of it is perfect. I mean, it's just amazing.
Very good condition. Very good condition. St. James on the end, his face is a little tired, but then I'm a little tired, and I'm only
a fraction of that
I'm
age.
only 59, not 400.
We're not doing too,
not 495 years old. But there we go.
495 years old. I was just saying before, when this was made, Kev was still at primary school. So there we go. Right, so let's get down to some prices. So first up was the
Set of four.
the quartet. That's right, isn't it? Quartet. Set
Yeah,
of
set of
four.
four, quartet, very
Jules
good.
III, 1767, made by Robert Alvin Cox. Have a guess how much, and the price of these is £14,800
For four.
for the four. Which I think, when you compare, guys, look, you're all big watch people, right? 1767, handmade, handcrafted in solid silver, beautiful hand engraving that would take hours and hours and hours to recreate in today's modern terms. That's if you can find the engraver that can do that sort of job these days. Compare that to the price of a modern day Rolex and you'll see why I just appreciate and love this stuff so much. Let's move on to the silver salts. So again, set of four.
Set of four.
And the price of those was?
All right, there's 7,800.
7,800. Again, you'll see the beauty of them on the macro shots. I'll get some close-ups and you can have a closer look. So 7,800. I've got to say that so far, of the two objects we've shown, I would choose the candelabras. But then we get on to this
Charles
absolutely
II tankard.
wonderful Charles II 1673 tankard. No damage. You could sip your pint out of it tonight if you wanted. Beautiful condition.
I think in practice with these tankards, you know, they're quite big. I think it was the equivalent of the 18th and 17th century gold watch and pen. They were given to men sometimes on retirement or as an expensive gift. So whether or not they sat there and used them is, I think, quite a moot point. I think they were more a presentation thing. It's
very
a bit
lightly,
like,
very lightly.
Bit like people, you know, today spend money in a different way. There was a thing called display plate in the 17th and 18th century, and people asked me, well, what was that for? I said it was for no reason other than to plonk on the sideboard and say, I've made it. A bit like somebody would probably maybe only drive their car twice a month, and they'd buy themselves a Rolls Royce just to sort of sit on the forecourt.
1673, made by Francis Leake of London. Beautiful, two sets of hallmarks, so you've got a matching set on the lid.
That's correct.
And on the actual...
And then actually you often, on these very early tankards, you often have just a maker's mark on the handle, which interestingly they rarely ever do by the 18th century.
The price of this?
That one's 8,750.
8,750. I actually, honestly, I think it's for nothing. I just think it's just such a bargain. I really do.
If you want one from 1773, which is the time of when Captain Cook was going on his first voyages, you're looking more like £2,000. So you know, you see how the
Big
prices.
difference,
you know, that one, the very early one, is
See,
three and a half. Yeah,
I love early.
It's 3.5 times the price of that one. Although you know, a lot of people looking at it saying, well, I don't understand that because one's bigger than, you know, sizes and everything.
Mind you, 1773, it's not exactly yesterday, is it?
Not exactly yesterday.
Yeah.
And it's the same system there. This one happens to be marked underneath and on the lid, whereas the ones from the 17th century are virtually it's not a hard and fast rule. Most of them are marked on the side.
A lot of people, when we talk about 16th, 17th centuries, a lot of people get a little bit confused. Don't forget, when we talk about 17th century, we're talking about the 1600s.
Yes,
when we're talking
that's
about
right.
the 18th century.
I think if you've got an American audience, it's different.
They don't
when we talk 17 in England,
we're talking about the century
something.
before. So 18th century is 1700s,
That's
19th
right.
century is 1800s. Now we get to probably, I think my favourite object of all, the spoon. I don't know quite what I'd do with this. I think I just, bit like a car that you put in the garage and just clean and sit and look at and handle and love and admire. This might surprise you, but it doesn't surprise me. 1528, Henry VIII period, made by William Simpson of London.
Yeah, he was one of the sort of well-known specialist spoon makers of the period. They've done a lot of research in the last 30 years. So, you know, if you went back 30 years, sometimes they wouldn't. It would have a symbol for his mark, but they wouldn't necessarily know the maker. But now they've been attributed to various make.
£22,500. Now I know that some of you have gone, how much for a spoon? But think about it. Appreciate the history, the age, the period, the manufacture. I think it's worth every goddamn penny. I really
But
do.
you could also buy a 19th century one. There we are. Yours for £100.
Exactly.
There
That's
we
the
go,
difference.
that's the
Show me that
difference.
one. I
That's the
beautiful-
difference.
Again,
beautifully made. You know, if you're dividing those up between the family,
Yeah.
you know.
I know which one I'm getting.
Well, yeah. Well,
Show me that one. Let's have a look. You can,
my sister's getting this one.
Honestly, I think some of this stuff is absolutely amazing. And the spoons that I've just showed you, for example, there's quite a selection here actually. I just picked that one because it was, well, frankly, the earliest and probably the one that I appreciate more than anything. Let me know what you think. What would you choose out of the objects that I showed you today? Which one did you like the best? Which one did you appreciate the best? And could you ever see yourself maybe buying something like that just to love, appreciate and own and maybe pass on to your children? Big thanks to the guys here. We will be leaving a link to their website and all their business details. If you need any help, I'm sure they'll be more than willing and more than happy to help you. Yeah, absolutely wonderful. Thanks very much. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
All the best. Thank you.